Howdy folks, Keywii here, and welcome back to Suzerain, a safe space in which we awesome where I was almost assassinated. We got a thing to do in Whole Sword, and we got a budget, and we got the news. Geopolitico. World leaders gather at Alliance of Nations. Calling for a session on the current affairs, world leaders will be gathering at the Alliance of Nations next week. The main highlights from the upcoming agenda were announced, and as expected, they will be around the current issues in Eastern Mercopa. In addition to the member states from the region, President Walker and Chairman Mileniev will be delivering their speeches at the Assembly. All eyes will turn to Constantium Kairut as the historic session will be taking place in the Alliance of Nations headquarters. So that's like the UN, the Union of Nations, or whatever the hell the UN actually stands for. United Nations, whatever. We've received the schedule for the upcoming Alliance of Nations session. According to the dates outlined, Sordland 1 is being prepared for the flight to Constantium Kairut. Mayor of Foreign Affairs, David Whiskey, will be attending the session as well as accompanying Mr. President on the flight. It doesn't specify President Rayne, meaning anyone could be the president. Funeral for Serge Wagner. A light drizzle was coming down as my car came to a stop by the Whole Sword Grand Cemetery. I was losing track of how many funerals I had attended now. Just another funeral achievement? Excuse me? Attend 3 funerals? Excuse me? How many people have this achievement? How many people have this achievement? Oh, I'm dipping below 5% here. Uh-oh. 4.2 people have this achievement. Ooh, that's not good. It's slightly more common than have the Supreme Court sentence Tarkin Soul to imprisonment, and just slightly less common than order pasta and rice at the Asteria restaurant. Alright then. Alright. At least I didn't break up with Monica, which is another slightly more common achievement. Anyway, I was looking track how many viewers I had attended by now. 3, apparently. My new driver opened the door. I'd forgotten his name already. He offered to carry my umbrella. I will carry my own umbrella. Under the watchful eyes of security officers in military uniforms, I started walking amidst the gravestones. A small crowd of family and friends gathered around the final resting place of Serge Wagner. Some of the media were calling him a hero, the brave driver who saved the president by sacrificing his life. It was true. Despite my protest, security wouldn't permit a larger funeral. I walked up to his widow, Susan. I had never met her in person before. She was holding a framed photo of Serge in her arms. I'm so sorry for everything, Ms. Wagner. I will never forget what your husband has done for me. My condolences. I'm so sorry for everything. A little less familiar, I guess you could say. We hugged, and she cried on my shoulder. I crouched next to Sarah's children. Little Anton was crying silently next to his sister, Erica. Pat them on their head. Give them a hug. I'm not gonna pat them on their head. I'm not gonna wipe their tears. I'm not their dad, but I'm not gonna pat them on their heads. It was fucking, oh, you're gonna be okay. Like, fuck off. Give them a hug. Father's a great man, don't ever forget it. It's okay to cry, let it all out. He was a great man, don't ever forget that. They were too young to experience the pain of losing a father. I walked over to the stand next to the priest, who stepped back upon my arrival. I looked around at everyone's faces. Today we're gathered here to mourn the man who saved my life. Today we're mourning a hero of our nation, sending off a friend, a husband, and a father. Serge Wagner was a true sword. He was honest, proud, and brave. More than a simple driver to me, he was a real friend. He was loved by many, and he will be missed dearly. It was a true sword. He was honest, proud, and brave. I don't want to make this like a political thing, but I wouldn't be able to find a single person who did not enjoy his company. His memory is engraved in all our minds and hearts. We must remember him well. I will cherish the moments I spent with him. I wouldn't be able to find a single person who did not enjoy his company. I will be forever burdened by the fact that this happened because of me. Not gonna make his funeral about me. I'll never forget that I'm standing here right here because of his sacrifice. He has left us too soon. His death will be event. Nope. The family he has left behind will have the full support of the government. I swear to cherish the life he has once again granted me with. I'm granting him the title Hero of Sordland. I'm granting him the military rank of Major. These dark times we need to come together in unity. Yeah, I'm not gonna make this about Sordland. This is just a man who did some stuff. May his memory last forever. Farewell, brother. Thank you for your service, Serge. May his memory last forever. The casket started to be lowered. Put my hand in my pocket and pulled out the watch Serge once gave me. I recalled that he said it protected his father from the evil of this world. At first I didn't believe it, but now I do. Give the watch to Serge's son. Place a watch on his grave. Yeah. The casket hit the ground, mourners sprinkled handfuls of dirt on Serge's grave. His wife and children hugged each other. I realized it was time for me to leave. I turned my back on Serge's final resting place. I looked up at the dark clouds above. It started pouring. The sky is crying. Others. Serge Wagner. Was. Oh god, that hurts. Seeing that past tense hurts. President attends driver's funeral. I thought I got another achievement. Just somebody playing Apex. In his first public appearance since the tragic attack on his motorcade, President Rayne attended the funeral of his deceased driver, Serge Wagner. It is still not known which faction or factions had the authority to plan such a blatant attempt on the president's life. Due to the lingering uncertainty, the funeral was a small private affair with only a small group of family and friends as well as heavy security in attendance. Serge Wagner, Hero Sordland. Coming from a middle-class upbringing, Serge Wagner lived an honest and earnest life. For more than 2 decades, he served as a driver and bodyguard to government officials. He rose up among his peers and distinguished himself so much that he became the driver of the president of Sordland. He selflessly, wow, I cannot speak, did everything in his ability to do his job impeccably. He sacrificed his own life to protect the president at the cost of his own life. You didn't need the last word life there. You could have just said at the cost of his own. His children may now grow without a father, but they will always know that Serge Wagner was a hero of Sordland. Farewell, Serge. Funeral held for hero driver. Serge Wagner, the chauffeur who selflessly gave his own life to block an assassination attempt on President Rayne, was laid to rest at Whole Sword Grand Ceremony today. The president, as well as a small circle of Wagner's family and friends, were in attendance. Meanwhile, the brave driver has become something of a folk hero to thousands of swords. Songs have been written in his name, and a building-sized mural of him has been painted in his hometown. We can rest assured that Serge will not be forgotten. He did good. Anyway, welcome to the Alliance of Nations. Sordland 1, flight to Keywii. I, David Whiskey, and the rest of the Sordish delegation to the Alliance of Nations arrived in Keywii. The local police escorted us to the Alliance's headquarters in downtown Constantium. Immediately recognizable by its gleaming dome. On entering the building, we were met with a parliamentary guide who briefed us about the procedures. After a strict security screening, the staff ushered us to the 3rd floor. We entered the massive circular assembly hall and took our designated seats. David sat next to me. All the world's most powerful people under one gleaming dome. One wrong word and the world will go to hell. And I'm glad to be among them. It's amazing how someone has managed to fill a room with people that absolutely loathe each other. It is truly astounding. Humanity has come far. How are you feeling, Anton? Ever since the assassination, I'm amazed that you've been holding up so well. But it must have been tough for Ms. Rayne and the kids. We knew changing Sordland was hard, but we could never have expected it to be this way. We managed somehow. Still having nightmares about it, I just hope that whatever I decide, it won't put Monica and the children in front of the barrel of a gun. It comes with the job. I and Monica already came to terms with this risk after the inauguration ball. No. That one. It is tough to be the president. Yeah. Oh my god, never do this. Making harsh decisions and dealing with their consequences. I wish I could have supported you more, but time has been a cruel mistress. What you have done so far is more than enough. Don't treat yourself so harshly. For what it's worth, I appreciate all the advice you've given me. The advice wasn't that good anyway. Whoa! Rude. Don't treat yourself so harshly. From the distance, you could see the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Nines, approaching his designated position. There was once 8 others. Well, the session is about to start. Let's get comfortable. It's going to be a long day. Mr. Nines opened the session with a short speech and called the first speaker to the floor. It is my great pleasure to invite Prime Minister of Lesbia to address the Assembly. Patricio Alvarez stood and walked up to the podium as the Assembly applauded. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to return to this podium. David leaned in and spoke in a low voice. Let's see how crazy this year's session will get. I'm surprised he isn't drunk. Stay silent and listen to Alvarez's speech. I did not reply and kept listening to Alvarez. When I last spoke here, the message I gave was of encouragement and support to this organization and the vital role it plays. Of all the challenges Eastern Mercopa and the whole world has faced since then, one has gone larger and more imminent than any other. Oh, hang on, are you going to talk about Sordland? The threat of the so-called socialist states and the actions taken by their authoritarian rulers with no regard to international law. A loud noise came from the table of Volksland. I saw Emmerich Hegel pounding his fist on the table in protest. Look at the guy, he's an embarrassment. The Chancellor is already mad. David nodded. Today, the need to come together as the leaders of the free world is more important than ever. Yeah, at some point I'm going to be called as, like, the neutral one. Because, like, everyone sort of picked a side, I think. Other than maybe Agnoli, I don't know. But everyone's picked a side in the communism versus capitalism thread. The CSP, under the leadership of United Contana, has been fueling Volksland's military-industrial complex with its expansionist aims in Eastern Mercopa. The world turned a blind eye when the armies of Volksland occupied Helgeland, and they did not stop there. According to our intelligence reports, United Contana made nuclear missiles were quickly deployed to the island. I pulled out a photograph. Even though it was hard to see from my position, I recognized it as an aerial image of Helgeland. We demand that the Chancellor speak the truth. As you can all see, we have evidence of the construction of silos. Oh, Suzerain. Do you think that's true? Shit, this is huge. Bollocks. No Eastern Mercopan nation can accept the installation of weapons of mass destruction in the middle of the Markian Sea. Why is it Mercopa if it's Markian? Why the different vowel? Emmerich Hegel stood up and kept pounding his fists. We hereby call for the immediate dismantling and withdrawal of all missiles and other offensive weapons from Helgeland. We invite all member states to support our call for a resolution in accordance with Article 11 of the Fulencio Treaty. A lot of noise came from the Assembly Hall in response. Most of the Western Mercopan delegates were clapping, while others either shouted in protest or sat in stony silence. Let us also not forget about the recent events that transpired in another state with socialist teachings, a state that wages war against its own innocent citizens, Welland. That's a bunch of bullshit. Welland isn't even socialist. Strictly speaking, Malak's party is called Wesig Nationalist Party of Nearest Socialism. The purge of the minorities in their country was again largely ignored by the international community. I would go so far as to call it a genocide. Welland violated our past treaties and mobilized their armed forces, deploying them close to our borders and authorizing them to partake in massacres. Lesbia is affected not only by the large wave of refugees coming from Welland, but by the subsequent government seizure of all of our companies and that were active in the country. We hereby call the member states to action against Welland and its rogue government. Thank you. Honestly, that was not a bad speech. I mean, there's some lies in it, but yeah, the speech itself is fine. I agree. He walked back to his seat amidst enthusiastic applause from most of the Mercopan delegates. President Nines waited for the noise to calm down and invited the next speaker, the president of Welland, Victor Smolak. Oh yeah, this guy. Smolak stood up. As he walked past Patricio Alvarez, he brushed him aside with an exaggerated sweep of his arms. When he reached the podium, he fumbled with the microphone for a few seconds. Then he smiled at Alvarez mockingly as he raised to the height of it. Which is a funny guy. I think the real chaos will start now. Let's hope not. Victor turned to President Nines and bowed slightly. Mr. President. He then turned back to us and stared out into the hall for a few seconds. Fellow delegates, it is true that the world today faces a multitude of challenges. In the midst of these challenges, the world's most powerful leaders gather here in Kairut. And what do? They make threats, promote hate, and spread lies. Is this the alliance of nations we all want? Where is the cooperation and friendship? Where is the unity? I want to remind you of the wars that the West fought on our soil, of the foreign troops who occupied our country and seized our valuable resources. I want to remind you how they stole the oil from our sacred soil, and they did not know when to stop. The ATO soldiers left, but their interference never ceased. They financed armed rebel groups whose only purpose is to create terror inside our country. So, fellow delegates, don't you dare speak about Welland before you acknowledge your involvement in our civil war, before you acknowledge your own dark past. It's not entirely wrong. It's true that the Western powers had their hands in Welland's civil war, but it doesn't justify what they did to the Bluetish. As it is well known, after the tremendous tragedy of the Welland Civil War, Arcasia made a deal with United Contana, where they agreed upon the withdrawal of their troops along with the removal of half of our army. Not only did they weaken us, we were left alone in facing the genocidal Bluetish Freedom Front, which the ATO funds together with Roomberg. Just like the delegate before me, I will show you some of the evidence of foreign interference. My throat is not happy right now. Okay. He picked up a large stack of papers and waved them back and forth. I have clear evidence of direct aid from Roomberg to the Bluetish Freedom Front. They smuggled tons of Ka-74s in Welland. They smuggled in their spies, smuggled in mercenary commanders. Finally talking about it, we're not the only ones now. I should say something, let Smolak know I'm on his side. He's got balls taking Roomberg and the West like that. David nodded in agreement. These documents will be published everywhere. Copies have already been sent to the investigation affairs of the Alliance of Nations. I expect this organization to do its task to investigate this properly, instead of leaving Welland behind as they have always done. Coming back to the claims of the lesbian representative, first, there is no evidence of civilian massacres by the Wessex forces, nor so-called purges of minorities. Second, the operation was limited only to the militant BFF, not the Bloods in general. Third, we know your government is also implicated in the foundation of the BFF, and that your oil companies aided their militants during the operation. Fourth, as the state, we only took what was ours. The companies the delegates spoke of were not only aiding militants, they brought to Welland by force. They were brought to Welland by force. Fuck, this guy won't stop talking. Know that Welland will no longer recognize the rights of any other country to determine what type of weapons we are permitted to possess or what type of policies we follow within our borders. One stands stronger than any more united than ever. Our people have spoken. The enemies inside our borders are crushed. Now I ask every delegate here to read our report on the connections of the West with the armed militants in Eastern Maricopa, and I ask the Alliance of Nations to do what's right. Well, it only wants peace. Our people want peace. They are counting on the support and understanding of all nations of the world. The proclamation is free Welland or death. The assembly roared with particularly loud applause coming from the seats of Riccan nations. And that was a strong speech. Seems to be popular with Ricca, doesn't he? Well, he played the victim pretty strongly, and his anti-imperialist stance was definitely earned him sympathy from Riccans. Most of the continent has still not achieved stability after gaining their independence from the colonial suzerains. Oh, Suzerain is like European. Suzerain is Europe. It's easy to forget it has only been a few years since the revolutions. I need to go get water. My throat is dying. Okay, so I got my water. Took maybe a 5-minute break to let my throat rest. Hopefully I don't have to do any deeper voices, but even if I do, I'm going to see about sort of softening them up. Victor slowly walked to his seat as he applauded himself. He saluted the Riccan delegates as he passed them. Next, President Nines invited Merton Van Hoorten to the podium. He walked up next to the microphone with quick steps. I get the impression that I'll be last. I thought I'd be next, but I guess I'm last. He was frowning and clenching his fist. I could almost see his jaw trembling. Seems like Merton is not in the mood. He's pissed. Uh-oh. It's Helgeland time. Stay silent and wait for Van Hoorten to start speaking. Mr. President, fellow delegates of the Assembly, and friends, it is an honor to be here with you today. I wish we could meet under different circumstances. Once again, the CSP nations, and in particular Vogsland, have shown us that... Is this supposed to be like the USSR? Have shown us that they are willing to do what they're willing to do to achieve their political aims. I must sadly say that the world has left us alone. We were one of the first countries to propose proper cooperation between Eastern Maricopan nations. Yet, when we were threatened by Vogslandian expansionism, nobody came to our side. Although Mr. Alvarez voiced his indirect support for us earlier in today's session, I can't keep myself from wondering where he was when our lands were under invasion by the very socialists he spoke of. So here I am, asking for the support of the fellow member states of the Alliance of Nations. Agnolia is under attack by Vogs. Loud banging noise emerged from the table of the Vogslandian delegates. All of them are pounding their fists on their table. Delegates need to learn some respect. That's for sure. Mr. President, please moderate the assembly. This is more than disrespectful. Emmer Kigalgi began shouting curses as Nines repeatedly banged his gavel for order. After a minute of back and forth shouting, the noise settled and Nines allowed Merton to continue. As you all know, Helgeland, which had been a territory of Agnolia for more than 3 decades, was invaded by Vogsland in the sudden attack. Not only did they unlawfully occupy our land, they brought nuclear missiles to the island the moment our forces retreated. Millennialist terror surrounds us on all sides. We must not falter. I invite all member states to find a resolution in accordance with Article 11 of the Valencio Treaty, enforcing the immediate dismantling of all missiles from Helgeland. I must also remind you that under Article 3 of the Ventry City Treaty, the Alliance of Nations must ensure the withdrawal of the occupying force from the island. I call the democratic world to action against the tyranny of millennialist, authoritarianism, militarism, and extremism. The banging noise started again. Hegel stood up and approached the rostrum. Ooh, I haven't talked to this guy yet. You are a spineless jerk, a lackey of Arcasian imperialism. President Nines called for silence and started hitting his gavel. The old man go. What does he think he's doing? Speak up in support of Van Horton? Keep listening for now. What does he think he's doing? All your complaints against us are a direct result of your capitalist and neo-colonialist systems. President Nines, please, what is this? President Nines smacked his gavel in vain as a shouting match broke out in the assembly. Finally, after a few minutes, the other Volkslandian delegates convinced Hegel to sit back down. I believe I don't need to speak more about this subject. Everything is clear as day. Mr. Hegel's actions speak volumes about the reality of Volksland and their corrupted ideology. I hope to see this conflict resolved with the help of the Alliance of Nations soon. He quickly left the podium and nodded for the other Agnolian delegate. The two left the assembly hall. President Nines announced the next speaker, Emmerich Hegel. Hegel immediately took his place and spoke in a low, seething tone. Thank you. If you'd buckle up, it's the Chancellor's time now. Stay silent this time. Here we go. First of all, I want to extend a due welcome to the new states from Riga that have joined the organization. After fighting for years against colonialism and imperialism, they more than earned our membership vote. I'm overjoyed to see them finally represented in this assembly. As our numbers grow and more states are represented in this stage, we come even ever closer to finding resolutions to the conflicts that plague us. More water? For hundreds of years, the dominant economies of Mercopa raised, pillaged, and exploited the continents of Riga and Xena. Sadly, Volksland was also a part of this plunder in the years before the revolution, when it still clung to the idea of imperialism. But when our masses found their voice, the old colonial powers and their new financiers turned against them. These powers did whatever they could to hamper our revolutions. They did not want the people to be heard. They are scared of us for showing the possibility of a better path. Of course, they don't want us to succeed. We threaten the productivity that runs on the blood and sweat of their working class. And now they have started labeling us the aggressors. Yet we all know it was the Arcasians who built the military bases all around Mercopa. It was the ATO that was first formed to fight against Millennialists. Honestly, he's completely right. He's gathering bullshit. Keep watching. I don't know where I sit on this. Kind of neutral. Suzerain was, is, and will be Volkslandian territory. Our intervention in the island was completely justified. Well, that one I disagree with. Mr. Delegates brought up the Valencio and Ventry city treaties. However, they are forgetting about the Treaty of Constantinople. Volksland exercised its right to intervene on behalf of our people, who were being oppressed and massacred by the Agnolian government just because they did not recognize an appointed governor. They didn't get to elect one. We acted in accordance with the second article of the treaty. If there's a side to be blamed, it is the state which murders its minorities for publicly showing support to that nation. There were also claims about illegal missiles. No country in the world has the right to determine what type of weapons we import. If there's conflict the Alliance can resolve, let's start with the Arcasian base on Ravenous Island. Lesbia has been housing Arcasian troops and missiles by our border for years, and none of the member states even talked about it. I also want the member states to look at into the Arcasian bases in Lesbia. And if the Alliance of Nations truly claims to have the people's best interests at heart, they cannot stay silent about what the Agnolian government did in Helgeland, how they took away the rights of our people. Perhaps then, there can be proper dialogue between our nations, and the nations of the Alliance can finally demonstrate that it can serve its intended purpose. But unfortunately, the Alliance of Nations remains all too willing to overlook such human rights violations. However, the Volkslandian government is ready, as always, to fight the forces of oppression and colonial servitude on behalf of free people everywhere. He raised his left fist. Is that Swordish? Did I catch that right? Was that Swordish? Did I catch that right? He said the revolution will come, yes, but it was in Old Volgish. Very similar to Swordish, right? Some words are even written the same way, but I'm surprised you caught that from his accent. Most of the delegates from Xena, Rika, and Contana responded with thunderous applause. Agal shook hands with them as he walked back to his seat. President Nines announced the next speaker, Queen. Are we actually the full-on last one? We're already at 30 minutes. Dear President of the Assembly, dear delegates, dear leaders of the world. Just as my fellow Eastern Mercopan delegates spoke about the troubles plaguing our continent, I also have been to bring attention to the plight of the people of the North. The Alliance of Nations, the ATO, and CSP, even the OMEC have never supported our people when they've been through tragic atrocities. Unlike many of the Western countries here, we never received financial aid when natural disasters struck our lands. The pain of our people was never recognized, not even when they faced the threat of genocide, but the hands of the Swordish kings. In light of all that, I implore the Alliance to take a closer look at the actions of our southern neighbors. They took in traitors and gave them protection. Their president even went so far as to blame our country for spying on his administration through his own private security secretary. And he expects the world to believe his lies? Mr. President, point of order. Can't let her speak about us like that. Mr. President, point of order. President Nines overruled my objection and told me to wait for the Queen to finish speaking. Alright, I will only object once. That was my once. I hereby invite all of you to determine the initiation of a proper intergovernmental investigation into Sordland. If the Alliance continues to shirk its given duties, you can trust in Roomberg to take matters into her own hands. It is also important to point out that Roomberg will not stand idly by if more Contanin and Arcasian military are transferred to Eastern Mercopa. I hereby condemn both the CSP and the ATO for trying to influence our region with a military power. Before I finish, I also want to say, Mr. Smolak, I'm looking forward to reading your report. I wonder what this so-called evidence is all about. Mr. Smolak? Oh, that guy. Right. Know that your slander does not work on us. Know that we are ready to die for our freedom. Know that our kingdom stands firm and strong. Expect a grand awakening. Thank you. That was the worst speech I've ever heard. I'm gonna not react because I was told that my objection was not to object, so I'm gonna say nothing. She left the rostrum without getting much applause. Then President Nine spoke my name. Mr. Anton Rayne, President of Sordland, I invite you to address the Assembly. David immediately started applauding. Good luck, Mr. President. I walked to the rostrum and took my place at the podium. In front of me were some of the most powerful leaders in the entire world. I looked them in the eyes. Thank you, Mr. President, fellow delegates. It's an honor to be here. Dear members of the Assembly, representation of Sordland is pleased to address this Assembly. Anybody who sends this rostrum must appreciate what a significant gathering he is addressing. They are addressing. The speakers who have preceded me have expressed their concern about their problems. Sordland remains committed to the Alliance of Nations and the ideals that gave birth to it. Speakers who have preceded me have expressed their concern about their problems. I would like to stress the importance of these words, Alliance of Nations. We are too concerned about some of those problems, and would like to expand on them. Yet we all know how often the noble ideals embodied in this charter remain unfulfilled and concerns unheard. Our country is the century. Our century is a century of the struggle for freedom, a century of liberation from foreign occupation. Our people are still not free from fear, not free from poverty and starvation. Our world is faced with the dangers of division, the dangers of large military alliances and nuclear arms race. Yeah, fuck these other people and their big old nations. Fucking calm down. Faced with the dangers of division. Now it is more important than ever to set aside our differences and unite under this charter. It's time to ask the hard questions, ask if this organization is achieving any of its aims. Today we are confronted by a difficult choice. Our great achievements may either be used for the benefit or to the detriment of mankind. It's time to ask the hard questions, ask if this organization is achieving any of its aims. I would like to address some of the topics mentioned here today. I will not respond to any comments made here today. Instead, I want to talk about our responsibility as the Alliance. I'm gonna fucking get down and dirty. I think I won't. It's earlier claimed that Welland was involved in genocide. Such strong words shouldn't be spoken without proper evidence. We are deeply saddened by the tragic events that took place in Welland. I condemn Smolak's crimes against the Blutish people. We are deeply saddened by the tragic events that took place in Welland. Sordland stands together with the Blutish people, but we will continue our cooperation with Welland. Sordland stands together with the Blutish people. I would also like to extend my support to Mr. Van Horten. I'd like to address the Queen of Rumburg. She talked about some hypothetical threat that our nation poses to Eastern Mercopa, while Rumburg's military has tripled in the last decade. The real threat to Eastern Mercopa has always been Rumburg. Today, it's still the case. Sordland always wanted to have peace between our nations, yet we were being threatened by Rumburg. Well, you can't say always, because then it's going to be like, oh, well, you attacked us in the past, blah, blah, blah. It's about modern day. She talked about some hypothetical threat that our nation poses to Eastern Mercopa, while Rumburg's military has tripled in the last decade. We will never recognize your vile words against us. I condemn your actions and your speech. I wanted to be diplomatic even when Rumburg shot down our plane. I also have some evidence to show to the Assembly Mr. Smolak was right about the KA-74s. Sordland only wanted peace, not baseless accusations and threats. If Rumburg continued its aggression, Sordland will be ready. Sordland only wanted peace, not baseless accusations and threats. I also have some evidence to show to the Assembly Mr. Smolak was right about the KA-74s. Rumburg has definitely been arming the BFF in Sordland. We discovered that many militant groups in Sordland are being financed or armed by Rumburg. Yeah, it's not just the Swordish people, huh? Blutish people. Sorry, it's about all of the rioting. We discovered that many militant groups in Sordland are being financed or armed by Rumburg. There's another important piece of evidence that we have provided to us by someone close to the Rumburgian government. It recalled in the Alliance of Nations to serve its duty. Rumburg and its links to rebel groups must be properly investigated. It recalled that the Alliance of Nations to support Sordland are facing an existential threat. There's another important piece of evidence that we have provided to us by someone close to the Rumburgian government. I'm going to hold that one close to my heart here, close to my sleeve. Everybody calling the Alliance of Nations to serve its duty, Rumburg and its links to the rebel groups must be properly investigated. Thank you for listening to our concerns. To bring my speech to a close, I wish to see resolution from the AN soon. Now I'd like to bring my speech to a close. The AN can no longer fail to ignore the machinations of the enemies of peace. We stand and always will stand for the rights of people of Sordland and Eastern Mercopa, just as those in other continents. If the right actions are not taken, it will be quite evident that international relations cannot continue on such basis. Ooh, I don't want to question the International League. The Alliance of Nations. You get the middle one here. Long live the Alliance of Nations, long live unity and peace. There cannot be any more procrastination or delay. The AN must adopt decisions according to the wishes of the people of the world. People of Sordland and I are honored to express our concerns before this noble assembly. I play the fucking charisma card. Peace in Mercopa, peace in the world. There was some applause from the assembly. Thank you. I left the podium. I walked back to my seat. David did not stop applauding until I sat down. How was it? It was not a bad speech, Mr. President. You did well. President Nines announced the next speaker, Dwight Walker. Oh, Arcasia.
Mr. President, I first wish to congratulate you on your election to the high office. Mr. Secretary, delegates of the Alliance of Nations, ladies and gentlemen, fellow friends, we meet again on our quest to bring peace and light into this world. But even though some of the clouds have lifted, the world has not yet escaped the darkness. The Contanin Security Pact is rapidly expanding its influence. It is very troubling to see a democratic nation of Mercopa be invaded by the Millennialist powers. I refer, of course, to the Helgeland's occupation by Voxel. This is an attack against the lasting peace the world has enjoyed since a century of revolutions. Today, our peacekeeping obligations are being tested by United Contana and the Millennialist bloc. If we fail to counter this and stop this threat, if we stay idle and allow them to build new walls and weapons of hostility, the attackers do not face any consequences. Then this unstable peace we believed we had built will be the world's downfall. The posterity will point its finger at us and for not stopping it. Emmer Kigal and the other Voxlanian delegates started making noise again. Excuse me. This time Hagal has taken off his shoe and was banging on the table with it. I have no words, the Chancellor has gone mad. It's getting ridiculous. He's not even ashamed at his age. Despite its claims, the CSP actions will only bring about war. We believe United Contana and Arcasia, together with their allies, could come to an understanding for our mutual benefit and our desire to avoid the destruction of the world. Yet United Contana keeps acting in complete disregard to international law. Their allies are forcefully taking land and imposing their own values on the people of those lands. I will say this to the leaders of United Contana. If either of us is to be secure, we need a peaceful cooperation, not nuclear missiles, shows of naval superiority, or invasions. The leaders of United Contana failed to demilitarize Helgeland with complete dismantling of the nuclear missiles and the withdrawal of the occupying Voxlanian forces. The ATO will have to take matters into their own hands. Hagal stood up with his shoe in his hand. What is that supposed to mean? You're promoting war in the Alliance of Nations? Mr. President, this cannot. Nine slammed his gavel down and shouted, "Silence, please!" Mr. Chancellor, please let me finish. We did not interrupt you when you addressed the Assembly. Finally, I propose the Alliance of Nations undertake the noble cause of helping the people of the world through rewriting and properly enforcing the Human Rights Declaration. The Alliance of Nations cannot survive as a static organization. Its size and duties are increasing enormously. It should adapt to the changing world. But peace and rights do not rest in the hands of this organization alone. They rely on the hearts of our people and the spirit of cooperation between our nations. So let it be known, my fellow inhabitants of this world, let us take our stand and see if we can finally achieve a lasting peace. Thank you. Most of the assembly applauded his speech, the ATO delegates in particular. God, I wish this scene were over. I've been going since like 15 minutes. This is a half-hour fucking speech. A speech, or a scene. Speech had very dangerous connotations to it. Yes, I hope we won't be seeing a direct war between the superpowers anytime soon. That would be the destruction of the planet. The applause continued for some time. Walker shook hands with various delegates on his way back to his seat. President Nines announced the last speaker before the break. It was Leon Millenyev. Oh my god, can we just fucking... I want this to be over. Is this supposed to be Lenin, I think? I think so. Millenyev slowly walked to the rostrum in his iconic suit. All the CSP delegates stood up and applauded him. Honorable Chairman and fellow delegates of the Alliance of Nations, Here we are again at the most esteemed meeting of state representatives in the world. However, increasingly we are being threatened, disregarded, attacked, or ignored in this assembly. The representative of Arcasia has just shown this unfriendly attitude towards us yet again. Arcasia you believe we are standing in the way of lasting peace. Yet, the peace they talk about was only possible thanks to our missiles and our growing base in the developing world. The ATL kept waging wars against people's revolutions and forcing new independent states to be their puppets, binding them to themselves through the Arcasian lira. And now yet another Arcasian president is telling us that we are the aggressors and they are the keepers of peace. We will not be silent when we war against these lies. When was this peace you talk about? Where was the cooperation between our countries? Have you ever accepted our invitation to talk about denuclearization? If you don't like us, don't accept our deals, don't listen to our concerns, keep pointing fingers at us, why did you invite us into the Alliance of Nations? Every United Contana comes to this assembly to address the real problems of real people. People who suffer because of your systems, your wars, and your ignorance. Whether you like it or not, we'll keep progressing the laborers, the slaves, the oppressed of this world, and believe it or disregard it, history is on our side. We say that to the representatives of the capitalist countries, come and visit us. Come and see the revolution working Contana. Show our continent to your people without distorting the reality. If you cannot do that, then you need not come. We believe socialism would triumph over capitalism in the end, such is the logical conclusion of the development of humankind. This time, lesbian delegates started laughing very loudly. Some other delegates booed. Ridiculous. Millennium or the laughing? The laughing, of course. You can keep laughing, gentlemen. Communism will bury you. That's a threat. Suddenly the laughing turned into shouting. If you really believe in cooperation, we will be waiting. We're not going anywhere. What about the space race? Aren't you going somewhere? However, the ATO keeps intervening in our matters. It is natural that the CSP would react. Despite threats from the ATO, Roomberg, or other nations or organization, we must not succumb to the further division and violence. We must ask ourselves, what do the people of our countries expect of us? They surely don't want war and bloodshed. Fucking hell. Hang on, I need more water. I just want the scene to be over. Everything up to this point has been fine, but fuck this scene. So let us leave our children and grandchildren good memories of our time and a better future for all. Let them look at history and say, once there were great divisions and complex problems, but the leaders of the world came together in the Alliance of Nations and succeeded in settling them in order to ensure peaceful lives. Let us act in such a way to make this session not a session of threats, but a session of hopes and the realization of them. The government of United Contana and the United Peoples of Contana are ready to serve their duties for world peace. Long live the People's Revolution. And don't react. The assembly broke into massive applause. Applause continued for some time. Millenniev slowly walked back to his seat as the president announced a break. That was a lot. It definitely was. Oh, it certainly was. It was troubling. Tensions are too high. It is quite scary, to be honest. We need to be careful. We walked out of the hall to have some lunch and fresh air. Is this the end of the scene? Please. Oh my god, I'm so happy it's over. One call from the Queen of Rimberg. Oh, it's on its way. Anyway, fuck. 49 minutes in. We're fucking done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, I'm Keywii. You can great to yourself a delightful day. I love you all. Goodbye.